From The Australian, here's what's on the front. I'm Kristen Amiot. It's Wednesday, February 5. Jo Haylen resigned from her position as New South Wales Transport Minister after days of controversy surrounding her use of taxpayer-funded car services for personal travel.
As I said on Sunday, I've made some mistakes. I did not break the rules, but I acknowledge that that's not the only test here.
The government has banned DeepSeek on its systems and devices on national security grounds. An assessment by intelligence officials found the Chinese generative AI platform poses an unacceptable risk. You can read those stories right now at theaustralian.com.au. Freelance journalist Antoinette Lattouf broke down in court on Tuesday as she reflected on her sacking by the ABC over a social media post they say breached their editorial standards. That's today's episode. In late 2023, the ABC's managing director David Anderson scrolled through the social media profiles of a presenter filling in on the broadcaster's Sydney morning radio program. He picked up his phone and texted a colleague. David Anderson's words are being read by a voice actor.
I think we have an Antoinette issue. Her socials are full of anti-Semitic hatred.
That issue was resolved quickly. Antoinette Lattouf was sacked 3 days into her week-long contract. And on Wednesday, David Anderson will enter the witness box in the federal court in Sydney to explain the public broadcaster's actions.
Lebanese-Australian journalist Antoinette Lattouf is now suing the ABC in a case that goes to the heart of journalistic...
Antoinette Lattouf was taken off the air at the ABC local radio branch in late 2023. The ABC said her social media posts about the Israel-Gaza war, posted during that radio engagement, were in breach of their editorial policy. On December 19, Lattouf shared an Instagram post by Human Rights Watch to her personal profile. That post is being read by a voice actor.
Human Rights Watch reporting starvation as a tool of war.
The ABC says Lattouf was let go because of that post, but it says she wasn't technically sacked because they paid her for the full 5 days. But in June, the Fair Work Commission found in favour of Lattouf. The Commission's Deputy President, Gerard Boyce, said the employment relationship between Lattouf and the ABC was terminated at the ABC's initiative. Later in June, Lattouf sued.
Ms Lattouf said the mediation had been unsuccessful and she vowed to fight on and take the case to trial through the federal court.
As the proceedings got underway on Monday, correspondence between former ABC chair Ita Buttrose and managing director David Anderson were read in court. The emails showed Buttrose had pushed for the fill-in radio host to be taken off air following complaints about her social media posts by a pro-Israel group. That correspondence is being read by voice actors.
Has Antoinette been replaced? I'm over getting emails about her.
Antoinette will finish up on Friday. It's a managed exit given the situation. I can explain more tomorrow. Plan to respond to all those who have emailed on Friday afternoon.
Why can't she come down with flu or COVID or a stomach upset? We owe her nothing. We're copying criticism because she wasn't honest when she was appointed. Managed exit, really? We should be in damage control, not managed exits, David.
The names of 9 people who complained about Lattouf's social media activity were suppressed by a federal court judge for 10 years on Monday, following a surprise application by barrister Sue Chrysanthu SC and solicitor Rebecca Giles. The judge said those people could be vilified and harassed if their identities were made public. Antoinette Lattouf's barrister Ogie Fagir said his client had been targeted because of her personal views, not her professional conduct, and said Buttrose and Anderson had acquiesced to complaints made by the pro-Israel group.
So far as the evidence goes, they did not at any stage involve any human resources advisor. They did not at any point seek legal advice. And we will say they completely and utterly ignored the provisions of their enterprise agreement and their own policies dealing with these issues.
James, what is this actually about? Is this case a question of journalistic ethics or of the ABC's human resource management, or is it something else altogether?
I think certainly journalism ethics have become part of this hearing, although I think when you strip it back, it's still essentially a tale about management or mismanagement of a staff's employment and their employment conditions.
James Madden is the Australian's media editor.
At its heart, the question is, did Antoinette Lattouf breach the conditions of her employment by posting to social media something that the ABC considered was inappropriate? Lattouf said parameters were established between her and the content director of the station, Elizabeth Green, but at no time was the word fair and balanced used in relation to any social media postings that she may or may not choose to put online. Obviously, their case rests on whether Lattouf breached her employment conditions, although it remains contentious as to what they actually were. Lattouf's argument about the HRW post, in which it was claimed that Israel was using starvation as a tool of war, certainly has some merit, if only because the ABC itself had already highlighted that claim by the HRW in one of its earlier news reports. So for the ABC to win this unlawful termination case, it has to essentially concede that it was wrong to run a story about that post earlier in the week.
Coming up, Antoinette Lattouf's side of the story in her own words. Antoinette Lattouf spent 2 days in the witness box of courtroom 16A at Sydney's federal law courts. Under cross-examination by the ABC's Silk Ian Neil SC, Lattouf conceded her posts were controversial, but maintained they were based on facts from reputable sources. A voice actor is reading her words from court.
I don't share facts worrying if somebody might think it's controversial.
When she was quizzed by Neil on posts she made earlier in 2023, before her casual gig with ABC local radio began, Lattouf doubled down. Lattouf admitted she had called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu the most far-right extremist in the nation's history in those earlier posts and claimed Israel had perpetuated
the worst humanitarian crisis and violence against children in modern times. As journalists, we don't operate on the basis of how people may feel. When I share facts based on reputable sources, I don't deem them controversial. If people don't accept these facts, you can describe it however you like, but I don't accept that premise.
The court heard the ABC's content director, Elizabeth Green, asked Lattouf to tone down her social media activity from the beginning of her 5-day fill-in stint on ABC Sydney mornings.
I challenged it, yes I did, respectfully.
In her affidavit, Lattouf said the pair came to an agreement that she would only share social media posts containing completely factual information from reputable sources.
No conjecture, no misinformation, just sharing information from reputable sources.
Lattouf said she believed the Human Rights Watch post that ultimately led to her dismissal fell within the terms of that agreement.
I had already seen it reported on the ABC and the BBC. It was newsworthy. I decided if it was good enough for the ABC and the BBC to post, it was good enough for my social media.
Lattouf agreed when asked by Ian Neil if the ABC and the BBC had a responsibility to report that information. She also conceded her engagement by the ABC didn't carry the same requirement.
I was paid to be on a kind of lifestyle magazine program.
On her way out of the building on December 20, Lattouf said she bumped into Elizabeth Green, who relayed, through tears according to Lattouf, that she'd been let go because the post wasn't fair or balanced. But Lattouf contends that was never part of the agreement and asked Green,
"How do you balance starvation?"
Antoinette Lattouf became visibly upset at times during her cross-examination by Ian Neil SC, especially when discussing the period following her departure from the ABC.
I was like, was I being followed? Or was that a coincidence? I don't know. And I started to just question and spiral because I couldn't definitively say whether I felt like I was being followed, and I was terrified. I've never been scared to be out in public the way I have been.
Lattouf said her dismissal caused her to drink heavily, sometimes until she passed out. She said the characterisation of her as insubordinate had rendered her unemployable. Asked if she characterised herself as a poster girl for humanity and a free press, Lattouf said she was trying to clear her name as a journalist.
I think my memory is I posted a video of me really emotional, saying I never wanted to be this. I just wanted to be able to do my job and exist safely. I didn't come out to be this I was on air talking about cats and Christmas pudding. I didn't want any of this. I have values, but I didn't want to be the face of this when this comes at such a cost.
James, this legal action has come at the end of a pretty rocky road for the ABC. It's also happening at a time when media organisations are trying to balance the personal profiles and platforms of their journalists, particularly on social media, which they themselves fostered in the early days of social media, with their obligations to fair reporting. What, if anything, is there to be learned from this situation, do you think?
I don't think any media organisation has quite got its head around the way its employees and its journalists should use social media. In many ways, this is a great test case of an organisation's editorial policy versus its social media policy. And that point was actually highlighted in court on Tuesday. News organisations like to think they can and should have great oversight of what its journalists post on social media, but the reality is sometimes personal views collide with the views of a news organisation's idea of what is appropriate in a journalistic sense. Many news editors will tell you that despite the initial rush to encourage their staff to get on social media and promote news brands on their personal accounts, life might be a lot easier for news editors if their staff steered clear of posting any political content at all on social media.
James Madden is the Australian's media editor. ABC Managing Director David Anderson will enter the witness box today, and former Chair Ita Buttrose is expected to give evidence later in the week. The case returns to the Federal Court on Wednesday. You can read all our team's reporting and analysis right now at theaustralian.com.au.